Hey everybody, welcome to the New Market Alliance Church podcast, where you're invited to not just attend church or watch church or, in this case, listen to church, but actually go and be the church. For everything you need to know about our community, be sure to go to newmarketalliance.ca and maybe even drop us a line to let us know you're listening. We read everything you send and we'll be sure to get back to you. Our worship service happens every Sunday at 10 a.m. in person or streaming online. We want you to know you absolutely matter to God, and you absolutely matter to us. Everyone is welcome and wanted. Now, let's join today's teaching.
I want to be very sensitive to the fact that in this audience there are many, many people with many different situations. Married, single, dating, divorced, widowers, people in good marriages and people in terrible marriages, and everything in between. And this discussion is for all of us to learn better patterns on communication and marriage, but these principles extrapolate to everyone. Doesn't matter your age, your stage, and there will be a lot of information. I will say at the end of the talk, I'm going to do the challenge I do every time I speak, which is, what is one thing I said this morning that you can take away from this conversation? I will just say, here's an interesting question. What would you say are the joys, the privileges, and the benefits of the good marriage? I came up with 11. The first is a religious or a spiritual significance. By the way, if you want to take photos of anything, feel free. Number 2 is a friend for life. It's a sense of belonging. Number 3 is deepened intimacy. Marriage often allows for this deeper level of both emotional and physical intimacy. Family building, economic stability, the safety net. If you know a bit of my history, I had a breakdown 14 years ago, didn't work for a year, so having my wife working at that point was an amazing thing. And also when I went back to school, it's also a social and a cultural institution. And some other ones, shared responsibilities. We will come back into this one very quickly. A travel partner, which is becoming more one of my favorites. Legal protection, improved health and longevity. Studies are very clear that married people are healthier and live longer than their single counterparts. And this improved health and longevity probably comes from this combination of emotional support, shared responsibilities, and healthier lifestyles, and personal development. By the way, if you have others, please send them through. Every talk that I do, I say I do with an open hand, meaning if you have other ideas or thoughts or books or quotes, please send them through. But I would say that I don't think a healthy marriage is the narrative we often hear. We just don't talk about marriage in a positive light. Often in conversations, I hear even my friends talk about, well, the wife or the ball and chain. None of that is good. Even in sitcoms, even in sermons. It's just not the narrative we speak of. We also see a lot of really poor marriages modeled for us. It is a joy for me to share life with my wife. But all we seem to hear is, well, marriage will be suffering and you're going to have to suffer. And I just say this, like, if you are in a marriage and that it is that hard, you need some help. And we can do this and we can work through these things. Your partner should make your life easier. But we don't have that narrative. So here's what today is and it's not. Number 1, it is to get you thinking of marriage. Number 2, it's just a moment. Chip and Dan Heath years ago wrote a book called The Power of Moments, and they just said your faith, your life, whatever is built on a moment, and we're looking at this conversation today. And number 3, it's a challenge. What it's not is a marriage intensive, like Focus in the Family, Family Life Canada. It's not a marriage course like Alpha Marriage, by the way, amazing, and Alpha Pre-Marriage, amazing, for the couple getting married, Alpha Pre-Marriage. And it's not a marriage book, and it is not couples counseling. Even though these are the things I will work through with my couples in couples counseling, I am not your couples counselor. I just think it's an important thing to actually say. But I think couples counseling might be the next logical step for some people. And I would just say, having a Christian faith does not equal having a good marriage. You can be a Christian and be horrible at communication, brutal at conflict, have bad emotional self-regulation, don't have good mental health, be abusive, be disconnected, poor self-care, and the list goes on. You can be a Christian and be horrible in your marriage, but it does not have to stay that way. I view marriage as a plant, which might sound like a weird thing, but it's either thriving, it is wilting, it's dead, and I use the idea of rebirth, sometimes with larger things, affairs and others. It's like cutting it off and just it's beginning marriage 2.0. But when we get married, we look so happy, and we have our lives ahead of us. But how do we get from that to the struggles? And I don't know. People often say to me, what would you say are a few things you see in marriage? And I would say this idea of inattention and complacency. We just forget. We're dating and we're involved and we're doing things for each other, and then life gets busy. So what I want to do today is give you practical first steps with what to do. Now, there are many ways to do this. Some of you might know the name Gottman. I'm a Gottman-trained therapist. There's an assessment you can do. Some pastors do Symbis or Prepare and Enrich. Do you do either of those, Jonathan? The Alpha one? Okay, but there's lots of these ways we can get assessments done and lots of things online. Being a Gottman guy, as what I would say, he's designed this Gottman Sound Relationship House. And you can find that first book there, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, would be the best marriage book on the planet. Side note, I have all the books I would suggest you read off of a link on my website. I'll give you that at the end. But he says trust and commitment are the walls, and then it's kind of building love maps. These are all terms you don't know, but knowing each other, and then all the way through to these shared dreams. He actually has a biblical reference, by the way, that you can overlay over all of this. Focus in the family, some of you have heard them before. They have this idea here, it's like your relationship is in the middle. You're both building into it. You have dotted lines around each of you. This is you taking care of yourself, your own self-care. And as faith-based people, Christ is the head of us, so we're both building into our relationship, and it's the head of our marriage. I often would say in counseling, I draw this, and I can't draw it this well. It's usually a really poor drawing, and I'm like, what do you see happening right here? And I don't think I've ever had someone who hasn't said this or that. Jordan Peterson, whether you love him or hate him, says, if we each live properly, we will collectively flourish. Being an adult is taking personal responsibility for ourselves. And I think you can only have a healthy marriage if you are working at being a healthy person. Being unhealthy overall will affect the health of your marriage. So I'm a very structured, pragmatic person. So I didn't know what to do here, and I created my own marriage flywheel. And so there's 8 categories here. I asked people to rank themselves on a 1 to 10 and begin to look at how they can be better. And as Christians, people often go, where's faith? Where's Jesus in this? And I would say, if you look at the pie tin, if these are all the pieces of the pie, our faith is the tin. Our faith is the foundation from which we do all of those things. So today, I'm going to look at 8 things very, very quickly. Each of them will have a verse to kind of begin with, but this is the number one thing people come to me in couples counseling. Household management. Much of this is that it has never been discussed and there are unsaid expectations. And resentment grows out of this perceived unfairness. Now, if we're just to be real honest, research says, all research, this is not fair in our homes. There is no research I've ever read that said in our homes things are fair. Now, this is kind of my catch-22. How do I challenge us to be better, and in this conversation, predominantly challenging men, without, what do we do? And so Maya Angelou says it best, do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better. For some of us, it's just making sure it's not you. It's not always men. I have many people who come in counseling, and it's the reverse roles, but it's usually the other one. So what are some definitions? The first would be domestic labor. This is just household management. Your house has to run. When you have children and everything else, there's a lot that needs to get done. Mental load is the to-do list. If you don't think about it, you do not carry the mental load. Who buys the toothpaste? Who signs the kids' forms for school? Who waters the flowers? Parenting, household, relationships, marriage. Second shift, some people, often women, work a shift off sometimes out of the house and then another one in the house. Invisible labor, things that are unseen and unrecognized. Anybody watch the show from a number of years ago now, The Office? Many, many years ago, I love how students are the first ones to raise their hands. There's a episode where Dwight either fired or leaves, and Michael is saying, where are the cleaners at night? They're not, watering my plants and cleaning all the toys on his desk, and then they're actually showing Dwight doing it at nighttime. And emotional labor, maintaining relationships and maintaining emotions. Joyce Meyer once said, this is just a statement, wash the dishes, set out the cereal for the morning, prep the coffee pot, pull meat out of the freezer, fill the dog's water dish, let the cat out, put wet clothes in the dryer, empty the wastebasket, lock the doors, look in on the kids, write a quick note to the teacher, lay out clothes, wash and moisturize her face, and then add 3 more things to her to-do list for the next day. Meanwhile, her husband turns off the TV and announces to no one in particular, I find that amusing, I'm going to bed, and without doing anything else, he does. This is not all men, but make sure it is not you. Again, it's an often discussed thing in couples counseling. Now, I'm going to bed often is a bid or an invitation for sexual intimacy. She has things to do, he's ticked off, she's exhausted, he becomes something on her to-do list. Sometimes, and I might even say often, intimacy struggles are the result of an unbalanced household. Someone is carrying too much of the load, it's taxing them too much. And so the really easy way to ask is this: do you both have equal amounts of free time? If you don't, rebalance things. Now, it's never going to be 50-50. There are different things in life. Who works, who's working in the home, out of the home, longer shifts, bigger commutes. Gottman always says this: in any discussion, you're either going to do one of three things: turn towards, turn away, or turn against. Turn towards. When someone says, hey, I'd like to rebalance some of these things in our house, the question is, tell me more about that. You turn towards and do that. And this is as far as I'm going. We're going to go through a lot of these. And so there's an amazing book called Fair Play, not from a faith-based perspective, and there's a deck of cards you get where you can walk through all of these things. Now, saying, just tell me what you want me to do is helpful, but it's not enough as the other person is still carrying the mental load. I read kind of a joke. It says, every woman's love language is not having to ask. I'm just going to leave this one. How are you doing in this area? How could you be better? What needs to be talked about? Number 2 is intimacy. And this is emotional, sexual, intellectual, spiritual, experiential, creative, recreational, and the list goes on. I often say to couples a very simple question in couples therapy: what are your rituals of connection? And here's what most people say: what? And I'm like, what do you do together as a couple? And here's almost what everyone says: oh, we love to watch shows. If we're going to say all the ways to grow intimacy, the bottom would be watching shows. Now, maybe worse than that is watching shows as we send reels back and forth. By the way, we all do this. But this can't be the basis of our intimacy. And we have to find ways to grow. So there's going to be 2 main areas here. The first is safety and trust. If I had to put a verse around this, it would just be 1 Corinthians. Love is patient, kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor, it is not self-seeking, is not easily angered. Maybe ask this as questions: is my love patient? Is my love kind, right? This is what you are in control of. You can make decisions of what you do here. And a good marriage is safe. A good marriage is healthy. A healthy marriage allows you to express your thoughts and your feelings without fear of judgment or retaliation. A healthy marriage does not have instances of physical violence or threats of violence in your relationship. A healthy marriage has boundaries that are honored and you feel your autonomy is respected. A healthy marriage has transparency and trust in the areas of finances and you feel secure in your financial future together. And a healthy marriage has conflicts that are resolved in a constructive manner without manipulation or aggression. I could keep going on. Do you see the concepts here? If you are not a safe partner, you need to know why. And this is something a pastor, a therapist, a friend might be able to help you with. Dr. Gary Smalley once wrote, when 2 people truly feel safe together, their hearts will naturally open. And when 2 open hearts are in close proximity to each other, intimacy happens without force, without effort, without energy. And we move from safety and trust to emotional connection. Now, emotional connection is an interesting one. It is, again, a very often discussed thing. In couples counseling, often a wife will say, my husband needs to be better with his emotions. And very recently, a man, and he gave me permission to say this, he, over dinner, he felt something, and so he shouted out, frustrated. And everyone turned, 3 teenage students, and they went, what? And he said, feeling frustrated. And the wife came and said, okay, we'll talk about, that's not what we mean by emotional, right? Just shouting out some emotion, even though I'm glad you're feeling something. In the book, The Boy Crisis, the internal security and emotional intelligence of a loving marriage becomes your children's best inheritance. So first off, understand what you're feeling. I would say as men, this is not something we're good at. It's been often socialized, sometimes beaten out of us. So we come at this rightly, but we must get better. In a therapy environment, I would put up a feelings wheel. You can just Google this. And then I just say, what are you feeling? In the middle, there are 7 emotions. And if you think of anger, turn it like an iceberg. Anger is what the top is. What are you feeling? Do you feel let down, humiliated? What are these things? And then I use 4 N's. Everyone uses different things. Notice you're feeling something. Name it. Normalize it. I'm not saying it's fine. I'm just saying normalize. This is the situation that's happening. And be nice to yourself. I don't like nice, though. I like the word kind, but nobody wants 3 N's and a K. They want 4 N's, and so you can change nice to kind. So safety and trust, emotional connection, and this creates a foundation for something that we often don't talk about, which is just sexual, physical intimacy. Something we all want to talk about, but rarely do. So just a few slides on this. Chip Ingram once said, "We long to love and we long to be loved, but we just don't seem to know how to do it very well." And for all the talk and openness there is about sex, I would disagree with that. Sexuality still ranks as one of the most persistent points of conflict in most relationships. Now, intimacy is not sex, it's part of the outpouring of it. And physical intimacy requires vulnerability and honest communication. But the best thing I've ever heard on this is what Jay Springer says. Learning about sex in church is like going to culinary school and only learning about food poisoning. And that's the truth, and I've been in church my entire life. Only the bad and never the good. Having a good sex life is all about understanding accelerators and brakes. Some things, like these ones I put on here, put the brakes on, and then what we just do is looking at what are the maybe quote-unquote accelerators. And there's lots of things here. And there's lots of things that we need to address. Addictions, poor sleep, kids, hormones, menopause, andropause, mental health struggles, health issues, overwork, underwork, lack of balance. It's all individualized. It's all different. But it means having good conversations around this. This is where I challenge couples to have weekly family meetings. I'm a big fan, by the way, as households having family meetings, but this is just from a couple's standpoint. Now, how do we know if what we've learned about sex is serving us well? And I would put forth a lot of the books on marriage and sex are really bad, and they've created a lot of damage as opposed to helping us. I actually would put forth we need a whole new paradigm in this discussion. I had a chance to poll 10,000 Canadian Christians a few years ago about this discussion, and 90% said no one ever talked about sex or pornography or anything in the home. 90%. By the way, all research is wrong. It's just a snapshot of a time and a place in the world that doesn't exist anymore, but 90, it should be very little. Junior high, we talk about it a little. As parents, we're still very timid. High school, most high school pastors talk about this twice a year for 30 minutes. Most high school students come twice a year, twice, like 50% of the time. So you might get one 30-minute teach a year. Then high school moves to university, college, the workplace. Then you get married, and now we will never address sex the rest of your life. If I said, let's create something that will fail, it's what we have now. And we have to get better at these discussions. One thing my wife and I found very helpful is a woman named Sheila Ray Gregoire. She lived in Belleville. I think she might have moved, but in her book, The Great Sex Rescue, she actually took books on sex and marriage and then put them through a rubric and ranked them. My wife and I have found this very helpful. So what do you do with this? Well, just a couple of thoughts. The idea of now what? Too often couples learn to parrot the right words, but don't anchor their talks in a profound understanding of each other. I'm going to keep saying this. Tell me more about that. This should become the normal thing that we do to each other, as opposed to getting, frustrated. Tell me more about that. And rebuilding trust. Healing is an art. It takes time, it takes practice, and it takes love. And I would say, if trust is a really big thing that's been broken, counseling's really helpful. Just to help you both walk through this. Back to the Gottman stuff, they have an app called the Card Decks, and it's a really, really great thing. There's a blog on it. All of this is on my website as well, all of this. And there's some really, really great books to read. I'm a big fan of all three of these. I just think it opens up a really great, rich discussion in our relationships. For anyone's like, okay, are we done talking about sex on a Sunday morning? Yes, we'll move on to communication. Almost every couple who comes to any couples therapist says they need some support in the area of communication. And I would push back. I think you need more support in the area of understanding each other, right? It's the idea of we say things, we're just not being heard. In the book on boundaries in marriage, they say that marriage relationship needs other ingredients to grow and thrive. And these ingredients are freedom and responsibility. When two people are free to disagree, they are free to love. When they are not free, they live in fear and love dies. And as in 1 John, perfect love dries out fear. So let me give you a very practical tool. Some of you have never heard this. Most of you, it's called the Rappaport Intervention by Gottman. Anyone know this, by the way? No one. Okay. When you are struggling and have a conversation, say, this is also called the talking stick. Something you do, if you're a kindergarten teacher, we'll do this with kids. So some person takes something. So you're not going to have a talking stick. I always think of like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. We don't have that. So someone takes an item, and whoever has the item, everyone else is quiet. This comes from indigenous roots, right? Someone is at the front, an elder. Whoever has the stick, everyone's quiet. So the person will say, I feel frustrated when you did this. I would appreciate if you did this. Now, before the person responds, they need to parrot, mirror back to that person what they just heard. What I heard you saying was, when I do this, it frustrates you, you wish I would do this. And if the person says yes, then the item gets passed over, and the other person begins the other thing. It's just an easy way to begin to learn and understand what each other is saying. I would also say, something we should often start saying is, do you need me to listen or give advice? It's a simple thing. And this is often us as men, we want to fix immediately. And sometimes it's just, no, I just need you to listen. And some people are just like auditory processors. Now, another great thing in communication is questions. You can get these card decks. They're all linked off my Amazon page. Again, I'll show you where it is, but they're just questions. And maybe as a couple, if you've been married a long time, you're 29, I think I'm at 29, we use the one called Rekindle or Couples. If you're a new couple, like been dating or just early married, the one called Foundations. These cards are all color-coded. It's all aspects of life, and it's a question that just literally, like if you're a golfer, it puts the ball on the tee, right? It just gives you an opportunity to think through these things. Conflict. Now, sometimes people say to me, we have no conflict, and I would say that's not a good thing. Conflict is okay. Not having conflict often means someone is just not putting forth their thoughts or that there's frustrated underneath. The goal is not to argue, but to disagree respectively. And if you do argue, repair faster. Now, in the book of Revelation, most of us will understand the 4 horsemen. When the 4 horsemen are here, it's bad. John Gottman has done something called the 4 horsemen of a relationship. And you can Google this later and find blogs on this. But he's saying when there's criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, you're in trouble. By the way, this is all fixable. None of these things are things that we can't change, but it takes us being willing to go, how am I doing? It's a posture of change, and let me get better. Now, at the end of the talk, I'll give you more conversations on this as well. And one of the most important things in conflict is it's not about winning, it's about resolving. If my wife and I, and she's my best friend in life, have an argument and she wins or I wins, we lost. We lost as a couple. The goal is not to win, it's to walk through things together. Zig Ziglar, one of my favorite names ever, says many marriages would be better if people clearly understood that they're on the same side. Your spouse is not your enemy. And if they have become your enemy, we need some support. Personal responsibility takes place when your buttons get pushed and you have an emotional reaction, yet you stay focused on your side of the equation. You must take responsibility for your feelings and fears as well as responsibility for your actions. So there's lots of stuff in the book, but there's also something called the reactive cycle. Some of you might have, if you've ever been for couples counseling, you might have seen this. And so reactivecycle.com is a free website put on by Focus on the Family, their kind of marriage wing. And you can go through this as a couple. This is just, and I'm putting up, sorry to put The Office again, this is a fictional couple, Jim and Pam. So you go through this testing and it will tell you those things that frustrate you, that are your triggers. By the way, we use the word triggers way too much, but your triggers, your buttons, your fears. This doesn't come from your partner. It could come from anything, exes, parents, just who we are. But let's say Jim feels abandoned. And what he does when he feels abandoned, the first one is he shuts down. Well, what does Pam feel when Jim shuts down? She feels unimportant. What does she do? She says, well, I'm going to put down yes, but. Well, I know I did this, but you do this. And then what does he feel? Disrespect. Do you see what I'm doing here? Like, I actually have couples walk through this together, and it's interesting when you can see your reactive cycle. And Gottman says, once you understand this, you'll be ready to accept one of the most surprising truths about marriage. Most marital arguments cannot be resolved. Couples spend year after year trying to change each other's mind, but it can't be done. This is because of most of their disagreements are rooted in fundamental differences of lifestyle, personality, or values. But by fighting over these differences, all they succeed in doing is wasting their time and harming their marriage. Now, when I put this quote up, There's a nuance to this. If there is abuse and neglect and you're not dealing with your emotions, that needs to be dealt with. But some of these things are just life. Some of us believe there is a right way to put dishes in the dishwasher, and then the people who may be wrong, that there is a wrong way to load the dishwasher. My wife and I, right? But there are things that that's just the way we are, and we either then have to figure out what to do with that. Family, as we come across the bottom here. And this is two parts, parenting and extended family. And remember in Psalms, children are a blessing, not a burden. And I will say, the hardest point in life is young children. And this is where we as churches and families need to come alongside young families. Often we give, I think, too much space when more than any time in life, we need to come alongside people. Now, I have an entire talk on this, and I have a book on this, but just a few thoughts. In the book Trophy Child, Ted says, "They will not be with me forever, so I prepare them accordingly." There's weight to this discussion. Your kids will not be the young kids that they are right now. Like I always see it as like a 0 to 18, grade 12 roughly, as they maybe head away to college, university, workplace, police force, whatever it might be. But do we prepare our kids for success? My daughter headed to Western, my son went to Queens. Are they ready for that? Are they ready to be without us? And I love Julie Lithcott-Hames, one of the most, if I'm correct, watched TED Talks ever. Why did parenting change from preparing our kids for life to protecting them from life, which means they're not prepared to live life on their own? We've begun to live in a world since the 1990s where we as parents are over-functioning, creating under-functioning students. And we need to address that. So from a parenting standpoint, I have a book, I have a talk on this, but from an extended family standpoint, this is where this Rappaport intervention's great, this talking stick, with expectations of each other's families, right? How do you create your new world? What do you need to address and walk through this? But talking openly and honestly, maybe decompressing after visits, or maybe setting some boundaries. And finances. I mean, I could just sum this up with live within your means and be good stewards of what you have. But I think relationships are put to a very, very tough test when the couple faces financial issues. And how you and your partner respond to a financial crisis is a very important discussion. I would say prevention is the best way to go here. David once said, the handling of finances is one of the major emotional battlegrounds in any marriage. You've all heard the big ones, right? Sex, money, parenting, in-laws, like there's a few things that are the big discussions, always. Now, Dave Ramsey, I mean, many of you have heard Dave Ramsey. His podcast is a massive one, but most financial people will all give you the same thing. Earn more, save more, give more. Now, there's lots of discussions to this. I mean, the average Christian gives less than 2% of their income to the church, which is less than our Rogers bill or Telus bill. There's lots of discussions on this, and I am not perpetuating earning forever, working forever, and like this is not the idea of we just keep growing and growing and growing. That's like it's this idea. There's a nuance to this discussion, but have a plan, talk about it, and there's different ages and stages with young kids and different things that we can look at. My favorite two that I think are often not addressed is number one, fun. I love Ecclesiastes, my favorite book of the Bible. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love. The Gottman Institute, who spends time researching couples, they actually take couples and have them live in these townhomes. They call them the love labs. I don't really like that term. They film everything appropriate. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of couples, and then they've created discussions on this. But they say this, you can have great communication, you've worked through conflict, you have all these things doing well, but if you don't have fun together, it doesn't matter. And I think fun is a really important discussion. I will often say to couples, what do you do for fun? And you know what I hear? We watch shows together. Again, it's the same. By the way, watch shows. It's not a bad thing, but there's so many other things in life we need to be doing. Now, so usually people say, are you telling me I should do date night? And I would say yes, but no. We've taken date night and made it something very legalistic. Anyone heard the 7-7-7 rule? This idea of every 7 days you have to have a date night. And date night means going out for dinner, going to a movie, paying for a babysitter if you have young kids. How do you do that? That's a $250 evening. So every 7 days this, every 7 weeks a weekend away, and every 7 months a vacation. What world are these people living in? This isn't normal. So I do not believe in this legalistic thing of dating. Dating is being together. My wife and I walk a lot. Go walk through Costco. We like shopping together, just right, choosing our meals and hanging out together. It doesn't have to be this specific kind of date thing. But walking or hiking, by the way, I call this stacking. I'm outside, I'm exercising, I'm in nature. I really see and feel God in nature. Anybody with me? There's something about that. And then I'm with my spouse or a friend or my children. Like, you can stack these things together. You can do dinner out. And by the way, if you need to use a coupon, that's okay. You could have dinner in. If you have young kids, kids go to bed. One person puts the kids to bed. The second one creates a dinner that's not chicken fingers and fries, right? Something that's just different for you as a young couple. And travel. And travel is different for different people. But my wife and I said when our kids were young, we want to do something each year. But it meant we had to actually then be careful what we did for other things of life. But we've actually valued experiences. We changed when my kids were in grade 8 and 9. We don't really buy gifts, we buy experiences. Concerts, events, things to do together as a family. And I would say part of this is your community. One of the great things the church has to offer is people. I love watching you as you come in at any church and just seeing everyone hug and talk and smile. Like, there's something so powerful about us as a church community. And then there's just friends. And we should have couple friends, and we should have individual and single friends too. Like, and this, it can't be we get married, we're only with couples, right? We need to make sure that we don't take marriage and that kind of idea that we just leave our single friends and other people behind. But how could you have more fun? And I think this is a great thing just to kind of brainstorm, right? Sit down. What do you want to do this week? What do you want to do? What is a novel that we can do? And here's some easy ones. Don't go to the same restaurants anymore. Don't go to the same place you always go. New restaurants. Don't walk the same loop we always do as couples. Do something different. Like, there's things that we can do as opposed to the same things we've always done. And the last one here is purpose. This is encouraging couples to discover and share their callings and missions together, but even understand their callings and mission apart. The top of the Gottman house is this. For some of it, it's just faith. Like, this is the idea of church and being part of a community, and where do you volunteer, and family. My wife and I, one of our purposes has just been that we want our kids to still enjoy us after they leave the home. And so we've put a lot of time and effort into family. And when our kids were younger, it was supporting them through like elementary, then high school, and then it was through those university years. And now my daughter's in Thunder Bay. We're flying up to Thunder Bay for a dinner and a few things before we fly home. But we're doing things to help our kids and support them. Volunteering. But once or twice a month, my wife and I go to a place in Oshawa called The Refuge, where we work with teens experiencing homelessness. Teens, not young adults or adults, teens. No matter how my own mental health is, no matter how bad or tough my week is, when you hand a plate of spaghetti to a 15-year-old who lives on the street, things are a little bit better. And so where could you get involved? And by the way, I'm not saying that people with young children need to go do this. There is an age and stage thing. And then work, the idea of being good at what you do and enjoying what you do. Now what? There's so much in these discussions. I really love the quote from Sarah Bessey. You may need to learn how to have a healthy, grown-up marriage together. We strongly encourage marriage counseling because therapy isn't just for sheer emergency-level crisis. It can provide good tools for conflict resolution, making decisions, exploring your questions together, and relearning intimacy. Accept the truth that you don't have to be 100% agreement on everything to have a good marriage. This to me reminds me of Proverbs 13:10. Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. So I like this. This is on my website. And this is ranking things and looking through it and discussing it. Now, you've all heard glass half empty, glass half full. My wife is half full or very full. I am no glass at all, right? We're extremes. I'm a doubter and a critic of myself. And so I might rank something a 2. She might rank it a 9. Tell me more about that. How did you get there? Right? This is us working together to look at how we can be the best we can. Some book suggestions. So my book on parenting is about 7 books in one. It's 7 chapters in parenting and then 9 mini books on every topic. I currently don't have anything on marriage. Then there are lots of different, and if I had to say one book on relationships, John Gottman's The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. There's nothing like it. It is the best thing that I've ever found on relationships. Now, there are different things we may have to analyze. So some of these, if there's trust that's been broken, rebuilding trust is one of my favorites. Fair play, another really good one. And there's a few books on boundaries. The Henry Cloud, John Townsend series, we all know. And I really love Neerja Glover's book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Not a faith perspective, but a fantastic book on this. And there's lots of other talks that I have you can find online, and I have 3 of my talks available now as courses that you can do even as a family. And this talk in the next month will be online as a course. So my website is kind of a clearinghouse for research and really good content. I used to have about 1,700 links, and I've been pulling off older things, and I'm down to about 1,500. But if you click on the Amazon A at the very top, it will give you my book list, and it will be categorized: mental health, marriage, media, all the topics. There's also, if you let this panel go across, one of them will be my Marriage Navigating Everything take-home. It's just a Google Doc. And if you click blog and marriage, you will find all kinds of other things on marriage as well. A few slides and we're done. I love Martin Luther King Jr., who says, you don't have to see the whole staircase just to take the first step. Reminds me of the other quote, you're under no obligation to be who you were 5 minutes ago. One of my favorite quotes. No matter who we are, it's this idea of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. None of us have arrived. As faith-based people in our relationships, in anything in life, we can always be learning, we can always be growing. And in the book Atomic Habits, they say take small steps. So no matter where your relationship is today, you can do something about it and you can begin to move forward. I said at the beginning, I'm going to end with a very, very simple thing that John Maxwell always says. Whenever you're challenged by any teachable moment in any aspect of life, what is one thing? What is one thing that I said today and you're like, that's for me. That's for my relationship, my parenting, my mental health, whatever else it might be. But then he says the hardest thing. You only have 3 days to actually do something about it. So today's Sunday, Monday, by Wednesday night, I'll give you Wednesday evening. If you haven't made a single move forward, statistics say you never will. The goal today is that we're looking at, under the light of the gospel and our faith, right? That's the foundation. How do we be the best we can in our marriages and extrapolate this to all the relationships that are around us? I will be around to chat with anyone who wants to out back. On my table, I also have our fundraising and I have just some cards. Thank you so much for inviting me back. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see you all soon. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.